that when we are having these conversations, we always start with the business analysis part of things before introducing the project management. As you know, there's this famous or there's this saying that I always like to say that, for you to be very, very effective as a project manager, you obviously need to have business analysis skills. And of course, I'm very, very happy that, when we have sessions like this, it's always after a business analysis class, because for you to excel in project management, of course, you need to know certain tools, you need to know how to work, and you need to also know how to engage your stakeholders, and of course, ensuring that provide the right outcome at the end of the day. So basically, we'll be discussing tailoring and other recommendations. Having understood that, we've gone through a lot of performance domains, and when I mean that, I mean things around, scope, schedule, costing, and all of that. So, why is my screen not moving? Give me a second. Aha, right, awesome. Right, so we've gone through a lot of performance domain within the last few weeks, talking about governance, scope, schedule, finance, stakeholders, resources. I'm sure at one point or the other, one project manager or the other had come speak about each of these areas. And of course, it's no news to us that the idea of what we'll be discussing today is basically around tailoring your process, as a project manager. Tailoring in the sense that, how do you ensure that what you're doing or the results that you're trying to get at the end of the day, it's you're not working with a huge plan and then the outcome is just a very little minute thing at the end of the day. How best are you able to tailor all of these performance domain to give you the right results at the end of the day? I mean, I think I mentioned last time also that these performance domains are extracted from previous what they call knowledge areas in the last few what's it called now in the last few versions of the PM book, right? And of course we know that the PM book is usually the project management book of knowledge, that guides project managers around how to deliver in different areas or in different capacities. So of course the knowledge areas before now used to be about 10 of them, scope, schedule, cost, time, quality, resources, communication, risks, procurement, stakeholder, and even integration. That used to be what they call the project management knowledge areas, But of course, at the time, those knowledge areas were focused more around processes, and in recent times of the project management book of knowledge, those things have now been streamlined to these things that we now call performance domain, where, these things are more around outcome or output at the end of the day, not more focused around processes now, but the output that you get in every project that you are in as a project manager. So yeah, just to give you a background around what we're doing. So the tailoring now is around tailoring all of these performance domains to give you the desired output at the end of the day, right? So right, let's get into it. What is tailoring, right? What exactly is tailoring? And of course, if you can see the two image pictures or images on the screen, you will see one who has a cloth that or a suit that looks like a tarpaulin, and then another that looks like someone who is trying to squeeze his living day out of the cloth, or the suit as it is. So the idea really is how best are you able to ensure that the resources that you have, you're not using so much resources on a very little thing. And of course, you're not also using little resources on a project that requires a lot, and a lot of things, form the basis for how to properly tailor and ensure that, you get the desired result at the end of the day. So before we go further, there's this simple question that I like to ask us. Do you think, it will take you the same resources to build. Do you think will it take you the same resource to build a very small family house as compared to building a 50-story building, for instance? Do you think it will take you the same resource to do that? When I mean resource now, I mean manpower, it could be finance, it could even be what's it called now, the man hours, spent on time carrying out that particular project, meetings and ensuring that all these quality controls and all of those things are in place, do you think it will take you the same time and resource that will take you to build a very small bungalow, family house of just a few bedrooms, as compared to what it will take you to build a 50-story building? Do you think it will take you that same amount of time and resource? I think the answer is very obvious, right? The answer is very, very obvious. Obviously, it won't
No,
take
sir.
you. Uh, was that for me?
No, I said no, sir. Certainly not.
Oh, thank you very much, man. Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, that it won't take you the same resource. Of course, the scope is obviously way, way different. From am I still sharing my screen? Give me a second. Please confirm you can still see my screen. I had to go off just so that I can see who was speaking earlier. Is my screen
Yes, I
still
can see your
visible?
screen, sir.
Aha, all right, awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, so obviously the answer is, I mean, it's very clear, right? It won't take you the same resource. It won't take you the amount of time. It won't take you the amount of financial capacity to deliver on those two different areas. And that's basically what we're talking about. How do you really ensure that you're able to tailor fit what exactly you want to do with the resources that you have? And tailoring is really a deliberate adaptation of the project management approach, governance, and processes to align with the project environment and objectives. Really, how do you ensure that you're able to capture all the information that you require? You're able to gather requirements from your client, the client, and then ensure that you have the right resources to be able to deliver on what is required. Most times people have it wrong like that. When I have one particular methodology, it is the same methodology that I apply for all projects. But we this is a very, very wrong idea around project management. It's not a one size fits all type approach, right? Yes, you might have a methodology that works for you, but does that now mean that the entire activities in that methodology applies for every project? Obviously not, so, and that's basically what tailoring is about. It's really essentially ensuring that, mindful selection or an adjustment of multiple project factors to determine what project performance domain that forms an integrated system to enable successful delivery of the project to better align with the achievement of project outcomes. How exactly are you meant to carry out your job just to ensure that the right outcome is gotten at the end of the day, right? Then essentially, the idea is just to be able to know how to best customize, to adapt to project management methodologies and processes to see that value is gotten at the end of the day. We don't want a situation where, so for instance, let me give you two instances. Somebody who wants to somebody who wants to build a mobile application, and somebody who wants to build or construct a house. Obviously, right? Those are two different things and two different approach most likely. Now, if you're going to build a mobile application, most likely, you probably would want to adopt an agile approach, where somebody's working on this particular when somebody's working on this particular feature, another person working on another feature, and then later you can then find a way to integrate it, things like that. And a construction house, which obviously will go through the waterfall approach, a very predictive approach where you're able to say, okay, what the first thing to do is a foundation, and then the next thing to do is to put your, what they call that thing now, the first layer, right? And then you're now building one step after the other. The idea really is knowing what best work for a particular project. Not a one size fits all. Sometimes some people will say that, I'm so used to waterfall approach, I'm so used to that approach, and that's the methodology I'm going to apply for every project. I think that's a very, very wrong approach to things, don't you think? Right? So, and that's what tailoring really is about. And the emphasis around this particular version of the project management book of knowledge version 8, saying that you need to find a way to tailor what you want to do as a project manager. You need to always remember that every project is unique. Now, if every project is unique, then your solution has to also be unique, in the sense that you can't use one size fits all approach for all of your project. If you do that, you find out that, you're spending too much time on a particular project. You're probably spending too much resource on a particular project. You find out that you're probably using too much manpower and so much team on a particular project when you don't need to do all of that. You probably will find out that, yeah, you're trying to polish something that is you're overly making something complex, as regards to how it's supposed to be. I don't know if that makes sense. And that's really essentially what the project management, the tailoring part around project management is about. How do we ensure that every project has a unique solution to every problem, not a one size fits all type approach to things, So, and that's basically what it's about. Now, it brings us to the question, why do we tailor, right? Why do we have to do that? And I think this is very, very easy. This is very, very easy to understand. Yes, the concept is easy to understand, but the main question is, how many people are able to apply these things in what they do? Everybody's like, oh yeah, of course, we know that every project is unique and, it should be done differently. But how many of us truly, truly have that rested in our hearts to say that, what, this is a project, and as it is a project, let me think about this in a unique way, which is to say that let me forget everything that I know. Let me critically look at this particular project and see what exactly fits in, what exactly is the solution to this particular project that I am trying to I'm trying to take up, and things like that. So why really do we need to tailor project? And of course, it's the answer is not far-fetched. We need to find a way to ensure that resources are properly used, properly managed, and ensure that we meet into time and requirements of our clients. All of those things are things that, up the top of our head, we can always think about and know the essence of it. Now, I work for, what's it called now? I'm in an organization that provides a lot of IT services, right? And I've seen in the past where what's it called now? We try to provide what's it called now? Quotations to some clients, and some of the clients will be like, why are we sending questionnaires to gather information about a quotation that will be sent? Some people will like, your process are just too, you people you just like English, everything, turenchi, turenchi, turenchi. Forgive me, please, for some of us who are not Hausa, who do not understand Hausa here on the call. They're like, oh, everything you're doing, everything, too much English, too much English. Why do we need to complete a questionnaire? And for us, essentially, the purpose of that is to basically understand what exactly is your problem? What exactly do you have as an organization? What is your staff strength in a way? What are you into? What's the resources that you have? Not financial resources now, but human resource that you have within the organization. What are the what's it called now? What are the departments that you have? Because essentially what we do is to ensure that we implement ISO standard and provide IT services. And if we're doing that, that is a company-wide service, it is only natural that you should be able to find out the scope of what you want to do. Now, these same clients, if you do not send these questionnaires to them and then you send a quote to them, they find out that the quote is usually oftentimes over bloated. And now the reason for that is because you obviously have not gathered enough information about the client to know that you are either overquoting or underquoting. I don't know if that makes sense to us, right? And that's essentially one of the reasons why you need to send questionnaires like that out, so that you're able to properly understand what the scope of the engagement is, and then you are able to intelligently provide the right quote to them. Now, most times when we send those questionnaires and people send us feedback from that questionnaire, it's easy, because that way you're actually giving the right for us, this is me be joking now. For us, it sounds like the right amount, right? Right? Others might not see it like that, but point is, yeah, we found out that we usually send what we think is fair, to the client, and then we're not overshooting or undershooting, because at the end of the day, we believe that is something that is fair for a service like that. Now, in the instance where those questionnaires are not sent, most times it's just way more than what is expected. And then the clients come to tell you, okay, we are just a 5-man team, oh, and you're sending me a bill of almost 50 million naira. Where do I want to get that money from? Am I selling my houses in the village? Things like that. Yeah, and essentially, this is a result of not knowing how best to gather information, and then you're able to tailor what you need to do appropriately. I hope this makes sense. Now, Yes, tailoring is performed to better suit the organization, operating environments, project needs, and many variable factors into this project, including the criticality of the project, the scale, the duration, complexity, industry standard, organizational culture, number of stakeholders involved, and the level of organizational project management maturity. This brings me back to what I was saying that essentially you need to be able to know how best to be able to tailor certain things, just so that you're providing the right service, you're providing the right feedback, and you're ensuring that the right outcome is gotten properly without taking too much resources to be able to deliver what is required at the end of the day. You find out that there are certain instances where somebody will say, "Oh, you know what, Oga engineer, I want you to help me raise this building, and I want to get it to the point where a linter level, or I want it roofed." And Oga engineer will come to tell you and say that, Oga, the way I used to do my own thing, it takes about 5 million naira to bring this to a certain level. Now, Oga engineer is giving you these things blindly without truly understanding what it will take to build this particular thing. He doesn't really understand, not that he doesn't understand, but he's giving you this thing blindly without knowing what exactly is your plan, why do you want to do it, how do you want to get it done, and things like that. And then he's saying to you that my own method, this is a Nigerian thing. Well, I will say a Nigerian thing now so that it doesn't look like I'm, but it's an issue that we have. People most times will say, this is how I do it. But sometimes this is how you do it does not really addresses the actual problem at hand. What is the right method for this particular problem? What is the best method to solve this particular problem? Yes, of course, we know that sometimes historical data and learning from experience and all of those things can help. But always remember that every project is unique, and the uniqueness of the project will ensure that you also have a unique solution for that particular project. And I hope that makes sense. Now, of course, we cannot overemphasize the benefits of a proper tailoring, right? And remember that I was saying that the tailoring has to be ensuring that you properly tailor the scope of the project, you're properly tailoring cost of the project, you're properly tailoring the time. Again, because of the uniqueness of that project, you're probably tailoring the quality of that particular project that you're doing. Of course, you can't use obviously the same resource that you're using for a multi-complex project for a very small one. Now, like I said, one of the benefits obviously is to avoid applying unnecessary processes, meetings and documentation. A lot of us, assume that in project it's more around activities, but activities do not automatically translate into results. I hope that makes sense. Activities does not actually translate into results. What exactly is the activity, and is the activity really necessary for the process? Not just so that people are just going in circles and going in circles, and it doesn't really amount to anything, and then that's just resources going going out, and it doesn't really amount to any outcome at the end of the day. How best are we able to take out certain activities just so that it meets the desired outcome at the end of the day? If you do these things, you realize that at the end of the day, the timeline for a particular project is actually the actual timeline that is meant to be spent on that particular project. The resources that is meant to be spent on that particular project oftentimes will be the best amount of resources that needs to be spent on that. Focus efforts on what matters, what exactly matters, and does it really apply to what exactly I want to do? Does it really addresses the major concern for this particular project? Improve decision making. Obviously, when you're properly tailoring some of these things, you know who best to meet, who best to talk to, who is the main owner of a particular process, who helps you achieve what you want to achieve at the end of the day. It also helps you improve stakeholder engagement. Of course, you don't want to constantly keep going to meet stakeholders to say, oh, here, yes, we are at this stage of this particular project. And because of that, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. The following week again, you're still coming back and repeating the entire process again. There's really no point. Essentially, um, point is we just really need to know how best to be able to ensure that we're cutting down on some of these things. Now, remember that what you're cutting down is not to also affect the total quality of work at the end of the day. I hope that you understand what I mean. It's not to affect the quality of work, but to ensure that minimal time is being spent, and then of course the right result is gotten. Now you're taking out unnecessary activities, you're taking out unnecessary processes that does not, amount to anything. You're taking out everything that will make the project looks too complex beyond what it should be. There are certain projects that they're just easy go project that you just know that these things are easy, but because of the complexity of the methodology the project manager is trying to adopt, makes it very, very difficult. And, the whole thing that needs to look simple now looks too complex, and then for them, they feel like, oh, we've spent the right resources on this, we spent amount of money on this, and everything is now looking like a beautiful nonsense at the end of the day, So, essentially, as project managers, it is really, really important that, we have proper idea around how to optimize and use resources properly, and then ensure that whatever we're doing aligns whatever we're doing aligns with the organizational culture, as well as what the organization seems to want to achieve at the end of the day. It will interest you to know that this same tolerance that we're talking about, um in the project management book of knowledge, I think somewhere around the version 6 of this of project management book of knowledge, PM book 6, its focus around tailoring is more around how do we ensure that each project is unique. Now, you're tailoring it to ensure that the project is unique, not necessarily having it at the back of mind that we're cutting down costs and whatnot. It's just the uniqueness of every project. That's what the focus of the PM boxes was about around tailoring. Now, a version after, which is the version 7, now had to tweak it to say that, rather than we focusing on the uniqueness of a particular project, we're tailoring should really focus around the process, ensuring that all the processes are more efficient, are faster, and then everything. It addresses the customer concern at the end of the day. But in the version 8, it's now more like an integration of the version 6 and version 7 that now says that, this has to be a proper thought out activity that, ensures that what's it called now? A proper decision is made when it comes to the processes and the uniqueness of whatever project that we are able to do or we want to embark on. Now, it's a combination of version 6, version 7, saying that having in mind that every project is unique, having in mind that every project needs to be more efficient and whatnot, how do we ensure that, these things are well thought of, before even embarking on it, and then ensuring that, the right outcome is gotten at the end of the day. Mind you, in every project, tailoring starts from even from the beginning of the project, from conceptualizing what needs to be done as a project manager now, not as the project owner and whatnot, but as a project manager. The tailoring starts from the concept itself, from the project itself, down to how will all of the activities that will be carried out be done. How will it go? What methodology do I want to go with? What are the number of resources that I will use for this particular project? Hence why it is always important that every project manager always has to share one questionnaire or the other, just to be able to gather the idea or the what's it called now, the plan, and to gather what exactly the client wants to achieve at the end of the day. Because like I said, you can have historical data, you can have your approach to things, but if it does not addresses the concerns of the stakeholder, then you literally haven't done, you've not done so much, really. The idea is really to see that what's it called now, objective of the client is met at a lower cost, as well as in a very good time, because that's your job as a project manager, isn't it? Right. So yes, I can't really overemphasize on the benefits of tailoring, really. So it brings us to the question, what to tailor, right? What are the exact things that we need to tailor? What exactly do we need to tailor? And these are very simple things that we need to tailor. The entire life cycle and development approach is one. The processes is another. Engagement is another. These are things that excuse me, as project managers, we need to learn how to ensure that we properly tailor them. Now, the first one is the life cycle and development approach selection. This is to say that what method do I want to use? How do I want to go through this project? How do I want to take this project? What are the methodologies I want to use? What are the things that I will have to think about, ensuring that this project comes to life and it meets the expectation of my client at the end of the day. The project manager decides whether to use a predictive, an adaptive, iterative, incremental, or even a hybrid life cycle. It is that he feels or he or she feels is most appropriate based on the factors such as stability of requirements, the complexity of the project, the risk associated with the project, the technology at hand at that moment, and of course, the stakeholder involvement and how frequently the customer needs results. Of course, you know that there are some of these customers or clients that will say that, you know what, I want you to give me result at every stage of the particular project. I want to have a detailed breakdown of what have been done, blah, blah, blah. You understand how those things work, and you as a project manager that you have understood what exactly the client wants, then of course, having it in mind that these are the things that the person wants to see, these are the results that the person wants to see. This is the risk or the likely risk that I will see on this project. This is the technology that is available as at today and how I want to approach it. Makes it very, very makes it very, very easy for you to be able to know that okay, this is how I want to go and this is the result that I want to get at the end of the day. Right. Coming down to another thing that you would want to tailor, and that's the process. This will definitely will include the scope and requirements of the scheduling cost, the finance, the quality, the resources, communication, essentially the entire process that you will undergo. These are things that you would want to either to cut or to add or to reduce. These are things that basically you would want to know so that you really will see if this will benefit you or this will cause you a problem at the end of the day. Essentially, you will realize that there are certain instances where when you have a project at hand, of course, there are clear processes that are in place that you will typically will help you attain your output or outcome at the end of the day. Now, when you as a project manager now sit down and think about it and look at it and say, well, you know what? I know that these are the processes, but is this process really necessary? Is this process amounting to anything at the end of the day? You find out that there are instances where you have to take out a process. There are other instances where you need to add a process. There are other instances where you need to totally blend certain processes. Maybe step one, step two, pretty much the same. And instead of repeating those things over and over again, you just literally just blend it, and then you get even more time saved on what is required to be done at the end of the day. But point is, processes need to really be tailored, and the beauty of this entire process is just to see that either taking out certain things or adding certain things that will just literally help me see that at the end of the day, the value that the client wants to see is gotten at the end of the day. Take for instance the implementation of an ERP system, right? For a client that wants to implement an ERP system. Now, I mean, I want to believe some of us know what an ERP system is. An ERP system means an enterprise resource planning tool. These are tools that usually will have certain or different modules in them. There are different ERP tools, of course, for those of us who are just hearing it for the first time. We hear of things like Odoo. We probably hear of things like Bitrix 24. No, that's a CRM, which obviously forms is a subset of an ERP. There's Odoo, there is Zoho. There are different ERP platforms that exist as of today. Now, take for instance, the client wants to implement an ERP system, and like we know, ERP system have different modules or functions, if you want to call it that. You find out that there's the accounting part, there is the procurement part, there is the sales and marketing part, there is probably one that handles human resource, there's one that probably handles quality, there's one that handles maybe something around compliance, there's one that handles maybe something around accounting. I don't know if I've mentioned that. Accounting too. There's another thing that also, there are some that handles things around timesheets and whatnot. Now, the client is a small business now, right? Let's say, for instance, someone who is into pharmaceutical services, selling drugs, medications, and whatnot. And the client comes to see you to say, oh, you know what? I want to deploy this ERP solution, and I want you to help me do that. As a project manager or as a company who wants to provide that services, would you now say that your own methodology as a company is to see that the entire ERP. Now, some ERPs have almost 200 modules. Some have maybe 50 modules. Now, when I mean modules, now I'm talking about like all these functions, all these departmental functions in them. Will you now say that because what you do as a company is to deploy the full capacity of the ERP system to the client? Will you now say that's what you want to do? Obviously, there are some processes within that organization that does not necessarily have to be on that ERP. Say, for instance, the client is obviously a pharmaceutical company, and there is a process around manufacturing on the ERP system. Do you really need to have that on that system? The idea really is to be able to tailor fit that ERP system to meet the requirement of the client at the time. If the client now later comes to say that, oh, you know what, we've grown to some extent that we believe that one of the things we want to start doing now is to manufacture some of those products ourselves. We now want to start making things like Gestid. We now want to start making things like paracetamol. We now want to start making things like Flagyl and stuff like that. And then you can then start to say, okay, you know what, let me find a way to now upscale what the ERP system can now do for the client. I don't know if that makes sense. Now, there are certain processes that obviously you have to take out on the ERP system just so that it conforms to what exactly they want. There are certain processes also that you need to add. Maybe there are instances where the ERP system does not have a particular process and you now need to integrate it with an add-on. Now, what I mean by that is, say, for instance, that there's a standalone module somewhere that handles a particular critical process that is useful to that client. Now, what you now want to do now is to find a way to integrate that add-on to the ERP just so that it addresses the concern of that particular client. So now you're saying that you're taking out and you're as well adding, just so that it meets the requirements of the client. I hope this is not too technical. I hope this is something that is relatable and you kind of understand where I am going. Now, point is, because of the uniqueness of every project, you now need to think about what do I need to do to ensure that I meet the objective of the client, bearing in mind that the resources that I'm going to spend, that we're going to take, the number of team that I have to deploy to ensure that idea comes to life, what's it called now, the cost associated for that particular thing, the risk, and all of those things. So point is, these are things like we need to think about while we're tailoring. First, you need to think about the project in itself and then start to think about the processes that need to be tailored. Another very important thing that we need to also tailor is the engagement. Now, what I mean by tailoring the engagement now, it just means that how often do you want to be speaking to the client? How often do you want to constantly have meetings? Do you want to have meetings twice a week, three times a week, based off of the contractual arrangement or agreement that you have with the client? We've seen instances where you know that the client will say that, you know what, because of this particular project, this project is really dear to us. And on that note, we want feedback every 2 days on status of what has been done. Please document it and send it to us via email and whatnot. In reality, some of those things don't really work. Not that it doesn't work, but why would the client want almost every feedback almost every time when in reality they don't even look at it? We've seen instances where the client will say that, you know what, we want periodical feedbacks and whatnot, and these things will be sent. At the end of the day, they still wouldn't look at it. But the idea really is to think about how best do I ensure that the engagement that I have with this client is really, really tailor fitted, in the sense that, we need to put together some things that we've done and then report the progress that we've made, maybe on a weekly base, maybe on a monthly base, maybe on a quarterly base, depending on the uniqueness of the project. And that way, when the client is now seeing that feedback, it makes sense that they're able to relate that, okay, we've spent this amount of time on this particular project, and this is the feedback that we've gotten. Haven't spent this amount of time on the project. That way it's easier. Everybody understand what needs to be done. There's lesser project pressure on the project manager as well. The time that the project manager is meant to be putting reports together, obviously needs that to be able to deliver and even increase on the output of the things that he or she needs to be doing. So these are also things that we need to think about while we're tailoring we're tailoring in project manager. The life cycle itself, the what's it called now? The processes itself, the engagement with the client at the end of the day. All right, so let's proceed. Let's proceed. Let's proceed. Let's proceed. All right. Oof, my screen has gone off. Apologies. Apologies. All right. So yeah, the tailoring processes, right? And these processes are very simple. First is selecting the approach, and then to tailor for the organization, tailor for the project, and then implement ongoing improvement. These are pretty straightforward processes for tailoring, and we're going to take them one after the other, right? All right, so the first starts with selecting initial development approach. This just literally means that how best do I want to really approach this particular project? What are the exact things that I want to do? What is the approach that I want to take? Do I want to go through a predictive approach? Do I want to go through what's it called now? Do I want to go through an adaptive approach? Do I want to do a hybrid approach? You as a project manager need to really select what exactly works for you for that particular project. And of course, this comes out of a proper, thoughtful consideration of the contextual factors that, makes you choose a particular methodology that aligns with the project needs and the organization goals. Again, you don't want to just blindly select. You don't want to just choose a methodology because you think you're comfortable with that methodology. It is usually not a one size fits all um, usually not a one size fits all approach at the end of the day. So we need to be very mindful around how we do that. Again, tailoring starts from the beginning of every project. How do I want to do it? How do I want to go about it? How does it, amount to something at the end of the day? Yeah. Let's look at tailoring for the organization. Now, this literally just means that you need to think about what exactly the organization wants and then how to ensure that whatever you're doing aligns with what exactly the organization want at the end of the day. I gave us an instance where I was mentioning that, for us as an organization, when we want to deploy or provide services to certain clients, one of the things that we do is to send out questionnaires. Now, we're doing that because of the benefit of that organization. It is not necessarily because we just want to send out questionnaires or we just feel like we want to send out questionnaires, but it is really about the client at the end of the day. We're thinking about how best do we provide our services to the client? How best do we ensure that we meet the expectation of the client? How best are we having it at the back of our minds, the interest of the client at the end of the day? So we need to be able to know what exactly the client wants and how best to be able to address it so that we're not wasting resources, we're not spending too much time on what needs to be done, and we're not wasting what's it called now, resources like I mentioned on that particular client, right? Now, the next is to tailor for the project. Now, this just has to do with the uniqueness of the project. We've overemphasized on the uniqueness of every project. Now, depending on the project that you want to embark upon, depending on the size and the scope of that project, this will help you know the products, the project team you want to deploy on that particular project, the culture of that particular organization at the end of the day. Now, when it comes to the product, or will I say the what's it called now, the project itself, right? There are certain things you need to think about. What are the standards that applies to this particular project? If it's a construction company project, what are the tools and materials that I need to get that really aligns with this particular project or initiative that the client wants? We've seen many instances where um, a project manager will end up using substandard, materials or tools just because the client says that, I want to do this in a particular time. But of course, you can't do that, right? Because of course, it will affect your own credibility as a person and whatnot. So you need to think about what is the standard of the materials that needs to be used. What are the type of products or materials that I'm going to use for this particular project? What is the industry saying with regards to this particular product or this particular project? What is the benchmark that I need to have at the back of my mind while I'm delivering on this particular project? What are the technology tools that will benefit, this particular project that I want to embark on? These are things that subconsciously, you as a project manager need to really think about and seeing how that would also benefit the project at the end of the day. Now, this is just the product or the deliverable itself. Now, when we talk about the project team, now these are the skill set that you now need on this particular project. Do you need skilled personnel? Do you need semi-skilled personnel on this particular project? Do you need unskilled personnel on this particular project? These are things that you need to really think about. You also need to think about possibly the geographical location of the team members that you're going to use. So, for instance, now the project happens to be somewhere outside Nigeria. And of course, you know that, of course, for a project that probably is a construction project, and you as a project manager, you are here in Nigeria, then of course, you need to know that I need to make use of probably some of the locals in that particular country. I probably need to take one or two people who would also deputize in my absence, just to look at that project as well. You just need to think about the combination of the team members, and how you want to ensure that that is properly delivered at the end of the day. You possibly also want to think about the size of the team members that you're going to have on that particular project. Now, you want to also say that for every construction company project that you do, you always use 10 resources or 10 staff or 10 human resource to deliver. If you have one that does not require up to that amount, will you now say because that's how you do, and then you take that same number? It actually doesn't make any sense, really, So that's what this is talking about. We also need to think about what's it called now, the diversity of the team in the instance where you're delivering a project and you want people who have different mindset around a particular subject matter. You want to get a team that really, everybody has an opinion, a useful opinion around what you're doing at the end of the day. So these are things that, as project managers, we always need to have at the back of our mind that is useful and helps us in decision making. We can also can push culture out of it. There's this thing that they say culture eats strategy for breakfast and lunch. I don't know if we've heard anything like that. Culture is one of the very, very important things that we need to know as a project manager. And knowing how to best tailor the culture of the organization into what you're doing. You'll find out that there are instances where, you've been tasked to do a particular thing and haven't done that. You then see that it doesn't address the way the culture the company operates on how the company operates. We've seen instances where after deploying a particular tool and staff are not chased after to adopt that particular tool that has been deployed. You need to know how best to be able to deploy the tool that it probably is what's it called now, has a proper very beautiful interface that will ensure that everybody is glued to it at the end of the day. We always need to have these things at the back of our mind so that we don't then build something and then still it doesn't address the culture of the organization at large. So again, these are some of the things within a project that we need to be able to tailor just so that we're able to address whatever concerns or the outcome turns out to be something that will be well appreciated by the client at the end of the day. Now, one very important thing also is to implement ongoing improvement. And I think from what the last Gbenga was saying with regard to one of the tools that I don't know if it was one of the tools, but I think I heard him saying things around reviewing and then ensuring that, you constantly look for areas of improvement. Now, for you as a project manager, it will be very, very wrong for you to just say, oh, I've done my part and I'm done. This thing that they say done and dusted, but that shouldn't be the case. You as a project manager, you need to constantly review what you've done constantly review, and then when you're reviewing, you are adapting. You want to review, and then once you review, then you then adapt. What are the things that I've seen? What are the changes that I've seen? How do I adapt to the changes that I've seen happen? And then it's a what they call that in now? It's a constant loop. It happens to be a constant loop of review and adapt, review and adapt, just so that you're not overly comfortable with what you have provided. There are this thing that they say that people shouldn't everly get comfortable with the result that they've done. If you've done something, you need to go back to it. So, for instance, now if you've been tasked to do a documentation of something, and then you've done it, and then you say, "Oh, I'm done. I just want to submit." You need to look at it again, critically look at it, evaluate yourself, and then if you feel comfortable with it, then of course you can go submit. But you need to not to feel comfortable with what you've done. Critique what you've done, and then always try to look at how best can it be improved. There's this thing that we say when we do implementation of ISO standard, we say constant, continual improvement. How do I ensure that what I've done, constantly improves on the previous, so that you're not in a position where there's always going to be one lapse here or here and there. You need to constantly review and then see where the error might be, and then see how to better make it not become an issue for you at the end of the day. So, as project managers, one of the things we need to always have at the back of our mind is we need to have that mindset of constant review and adaptation. Let's always be in that loop of. I know sometimes people will say, "Oh, but that would mean that we're spending too much time on a particular project or a particular process." I mean, don't you think it's better for you to spend longer time on a project and have beautiful output than spend shorter time on it, and then what you have is not something that will stand the test of time? I think that's a question that we need to have at the back of our mind, right? So, going over the process again, ensuring that you select a proper approach that you have at the back of your mind that you want to use, tailor fit the process or the project to meet the client's expectation. Ensure that the project that you're also tailoring addresses things around the product quality and whatnot, ensuring that there's proper team in place, and also the culture of the organization. And of course, constantly review and adapt to some of those processes. Now, coming back to the performance domains that I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this session, remember that I mentioned that uh, giving us a background around, the project management and those performance domain where we have all the scope, what's it called now, scheduling, scope, governance, what's it called now, cost, finance, all of those things, right? Essentially, your job as a project manager is to ensure that all of those things are properly done, because if you don't properly tailor all of this performance domain, you realize that you end up spending more time, more resource on the project where you shouldn't. You find out, you realize that all of those things, if they're not properly integrated and you're not properly tailor fitting it, it becomes an issue for you at the end of the day. And then once the result is out, the clients will now be like, "Oh, I spent a lot of money on this just to get this kind of result." Things like that will come up. So it is essential for us to be able to have a very, very beautiful mindset as project managers. How do we ensure that we're very proactive? How do we ensure that we're accountable, and we're always putting ourselves in the shoes of the project sponsor? We're always having it at the back of our mind that how do we ensure that value is gotten at the end of the day? It is only when we have it at the back of our mind that value is what we want to provide at the end of the day. In the previous knowledge areas, no, not knowledge areas now, in the previous versions of the PM book, the idea before was to ensure that you as a project manager, provide the desired output, and it ends there. But recently, in the recent version, it is not about ending at the outcome or output. It is about the value that you are providing at the end of the day. Is it a service that you've provided that addresses the concerns of the client? Is it a value that you've provided or is it a service that you've provided that meets or solves the problem that the client has? There are instances where you see that people just have solutions that they've provided, but how long is that solution sustainable? Is that something that truly, truly addresses the root cause of a particular problem? Things like that, and that's why essentially what we advise project managers to do is always have it at the back of your mind. Always think about the client. Always have them, excuse me, at the back of your mind. Think like them, and then you're able to ensure that the right value is gotten at the end of the day. And of course, we've talked about constantly being in the loop of reviews and adaptation. It will be very, very wrong of you to just say, oh, you know what, I've delivered my polling unit and that's the end of it. But sometimes some of these things go beyond just delivering your polling units. It's actually about the value that is provided at the end of the day. And then you see that some of these things will, it has you're building a mindset in the minds of your customers or your clients at the end of the day, because they say, oh, you know what, this guy is someone who has me at the back of their mind, and he's very, very proactive. This service provider now are people who are very, very, sympathetic isn't the word I want to use, but very considerate. It's people who really, feel the pain, and also we feeling like they are the ones who are in this particular position. And of course, you always will find yourself in the instance in a situation where you have return. I don't want to start talking like a business person now, but you always will see things like return patronage and here and things like that, because you've been able to address the actual concern, the actual problem, and you have referrals here and there because of how well you've been able to deliver on certain initiatives. And of course, as project managers, it will interest us to know that some of the recommendations to always have at the back of our minds is do not always tailor in isolation. What I mean by that is, even if you want to tailor as a project manager, you know that this is the right thing I want to do. Always involve the stakeholders, right? Because if you say, yes, I want to tailor it and I want to ensure that I impress the client, I provide the services at a shorter period of time, without consulting and talking to the stakeholders. You don't want to be in a situation where they now say, who sent you? Who sent you? Who sent you? Things like that, So always do not tailor in isolation. Always try as much as possible that you carry stakeholders along, giving them justification to why you want to do this and why you think this is going to be useful to them, and how it will also affect in a positive way the outcome that you also have at the back of your mind. Always document the tailoring decision. Why do I want to do this? Why I feel this is important? Why I feel this will be beneficial and useful to this particular project. Always what's it called now, carry, like I said, carry the stakeholders along. Always ensure that they see reasons why you're doing what you're doing and why it should positively affect the project at the end of the day. Always try as much as possible to tailor without compromising the organization requirements. That is something very, very important as well. If the organization has told you that this is what I want to do and this is the clear requirement that I want, overdo does not pay. Of course, you as a project manager wants to intelligently provide better outcome and better services and whatnot, but always try as much as possible not to compromise the requirements of the client at the end of the day, because essentially some will tell you that this is what I said I want. Do not overdo, do not underdo. Just do as I say. Yeah. So, it is now your own role as a project manager to now intelligently advise, make them see reasons, even if this is what they're saying they want. Of course, you have to come to a understanding between yourself and them to say, okay, this is what I think should work. If they then insist that this is what they want, then of course you have to deliver in that instance. But you always will have to sit down with them and stakeholders and then say, this is what I think is best. This is how I think this will be useful. This is how I think this will also benefit us at the end of the day. So, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. From me, one of the things that I also will say is that tailoring is not a permission for you to ignore good project management methodology, right? It is not a permission for you to ignore what you think is best. It is really more around the discipline and the understanding of what a good project manager should look for, and what the person believes, is the best solution to a particular project. Always remember that every project is unique, and as much as all projects are unique, you also need to think about a unique way to provide that solution to the client at the end of the day. So as I wrap up, right, I think I have two questions that I would like to ask, and I'm very, very delighted to get feedback and opinion around those things. What do you think? Do you think there's a difference between tailoring and standardization? This is just something that I'm just asking, generally. Do you think there's a difference between tailoring and standardization? If yes, what do you think is the difference between tailoring and standardization? What is there a uniqueness? Is there a similarity there, or do you think these are two distinct things that have no similarity whatsoever? So I think at this point I would like to, and I would very much appreciate feedback. I can't see my screen now, but I very much appreciate feedback. So do you think there's a difference between tailoring and standardization? Um, what do you think that is, right? Also, the last question also would be, um, do you think there's a difference between tailoring and changing plans? This is a question to just test our minds, right? Do you think there's a difference between tailoring and standardization? Do you also think there's a difference between tailoring and just normal changing of plans? Is there a difference? Is there a similarity in there? Is there something that binds them one way or another? I think I very much appreciate feedback, thoughts around this as we draw the curtain for today's session. Previously, I've taken us through some certain tools, AI tools that I think were useful towards project management. And I think I did that when we're doing scoping, I think, yes. And some of the tools that I took us through were things around ClickUp Mind, which is a tool that, essentially helps you around project management and how best you're able to utilize that. So, questions. I think this is it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I asked the question. I don't know if anybody had been able to put that in the chat room. Is there a difference between tailoring and standardization? Do you think there's also a difference between tailoring and just changing of plans? I think you can unmute your mic if you want to speak. You can raise your hand if you want to, as we bring this session to a beautiful close. That's it from me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me. I think at this point I will entertain questions if there are and addressing any concerns. Thank you very much. Thank you. So let me go to the chat room to see what's going on there. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope I didn't bore you. I didn't bore you all. Let's go to the chat room. Okay, so wow, chat room. Okay. Attendance. Okay. Okay, tailoring is a subset of standardization. Thank you very much, Mr. Rick. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you very much. Although I would have loved to hear your opinion around it, like maybe unmute your mic so that I can hear your thoughts around it. I know this, you've said this, but I would very much appreciate if you could unmute your mic. Who's this now? Mr. Bello Bature. They're similar, but tailoring is bringing out the need for a situation technique applicable to a project, while standardization is a general requirement to meet industry standard. That's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. Let's see. We have other people who have thoughts and opinion around it.
Okay,
That's
okay, sir. Okay, sir.
okay. I think
Okay,
this is
sir.
Mr. Rick. I want
Yes,
to
sir.
believe this is my. Yeah, awesome.
All
Please go
right.
ahead.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity. When I say tailoring is a subset of standardization, I'm trying to say that, let me just give an example. Imagine I don't know your size and my size. So here is a tailor who has to measure two different people of different sizes. Okay. He has a standard that he's using to either start from the hip or the shoulder
Yeah.
or the arms and all of that. So the arms and the shoulder measurement that he or she does is based on a certain standard. So in a nutshell, just like the second contributor said, every PM must follow a particular standard, making sure that he meets a different client designs based on the standards that are there, or industry standards, as the case may be. Thank you,
Awesome.
sir.
Awesome. I think that was spot on. Thank you very much. Thank you. Essentially what that just literally means, right, is that for standardization, it's basically more around being consistent with a particular approach towards what will be beneficial on some projects, right? Yes, you have a standard and how you go about certain things, but of course the uniqueness of every project will make you apply that standardization that you have on those projects. So tailoring is more around, understanding the uniqueness of a particular project. However, standardization is now being consistent and taking a predefined approach, towards a particular project. Now, this can also happen in terms of, say, for instance, in the area of construction. Now, for you to tailor will now mean that you are getting the right product and the right amount of product that you need for something. Standardization now will now mean that you have the right quality of what you want to do for that particular project. I don't know if that makes sense. Even though tailoring, you're trying to make sure that you're not overly spending resources. Now that has nothing to obviously do with the quality of product that you want to use for that particular project as it were. So I think we're all within the same line. And of course, for in the area around changing of plans, of course, changing plans and tailoring are obviously different. Changing plans are things that obviously the stakeholders must have signed off on to say, what, we're switching, we're trying to adjust to a new activity or a new plan whatsoever, while tailoring is just ensuring that what you're doing does not overly spend resources as well as time and energy on what ordinarily shouldn't take as much. So that's basically what they mean. And I truly appreciate you for your thought and for your feedback. I hope that, we've learned one thing here. And like I said, these are things that we always will see around us, and they're quite relatable, and there are things that will definitely benefit us as we embark on any project management initiative. So again, thank you very much for having me. I truly appreciate you, and I hope that we've learned one thing or the other. I'd like to use this opportunity now to hand over to Messi as we draw the curtain on today's session. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, please. Thank you. Thank you. Please appreciate our trainer. Please, do you have any question? Before we call it a day, do we have any question? Okay, I think we don't have any questions. So in the absence of question, I'll just take your announcement and then we'll call it a day. Thank you so much, everyone, for your cooperation and your consistency. I really appreciate you. And then I still want to talk about your assessment. We have just 1 week to wrap up our training session, right? So anyone who is still lagging behind as regarding their assessment, please do well to finish up all assessments on or before next week. Please note that after Wednesday next week, Wednesday. Okay, let's do it on Friday because of today's class. So after Friday next week, we will not be attending to anything assessment again. So please take note of this. By Friday next week, we should be able to round up all of our assessments. So please, if you are still behind, try as much as you can to tidy up all of your assessments. Because after that Saturday, it means we are done. The coming Saturday is going to be that should be on the 5th of September. It's going to be your graduation. So please, as much as you can, please, we want you to cooperate with us so that we can give you all that you need. Thank you so much. And then follow us on all of our social media handles. As usual, today's training material, as well as the YouTube recording link, is going to be sent to you all in the group. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And then as regarding the payment for those of our foreign students, like I communicated with one of us yesterday, we have finalized everything. We are at the last level. So we are just waiting for approval. Submitted all that they ask of us to submit in order to get the payment gateway. So please, we still beckon on you to be patient. That's for our foreign students. And then for our students, our national students, please do well to pay your assessment fee so that all your assessment will not be counted as futile, okay? So please, and please, you cannot be doing assessment at the end of the day, you don't pay your assessment fee, your registration fee. So please do well to do so. And like I said earlier, before we commenced today's class, I mentioned that once we are done with graduation, we will not have anything to do with assessment anymore or payment. Immediately after graduation, we are closing everything about summer program. It means that if you are still behind, it means you'll be registering for next year's summer program. So please kindly cooperate with us. I hope this is understood overall. All right, I believe we all understand.
Yes,
And
yes, Mercy.
yes, sir, I
Mercy.
can hear
Yes,
you.
Mercy.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to ask privately, but I thought maybe if I ask here, it will be what is on someone else's mind. In the group, you shared that there will be those who will be given attestation only and those who will be given certificates. So I wasn't too clear about that. And what are the
No, that's
what is
not
it that we that are here on this call?
okay. Okay, no, that's
Sorry, go
not for
ahead.
summer program, sir. Can you hear me? That's not for summer
Loud and
program,
clear,
sir.
please.
Do you get it
Okay,
now?
okay.
Yes. So summer
Yes,
program
I
is
do.
what we
Thank you.
just do once. Yes. So that information is for those that did diploma in information system, entrepreneurship, and business management. That is it. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you in our last class coming up next week. If there is any other changes, you will definitely hear from us. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.